You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, author of the book, Consider My Servant Job. This makes a great gift for whatever holiday is coming up right now. Get a head start on the Old Testament. And this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Christ. Spectacular number 31. No, I'm not stopping. So, news, DOGE. Apparently, the U.S. military, they had some credit cards and the people were just overspending. And so what Elon Musk did is he set the limit to $1. Yeah, you got a credit, you got an expense account, but you can only spend $1. That's a very clever and shrewd way to get around a problem. Lateral thinking, as I heard it described. Yeah, give him somebody who's really clever. Other things that are going on with DOGE is that grants are canceled, and what that means is that as it works through the pipeline, programs are being shut down. You're hearing this about Columbia University with questions about anti-Semitism at college universities, which ought to bother anyone and everyone, even if you are goyim. But once you normalize anti-Semitism, you normalize everything. But what happened yesterday, I heard that a friend of mine was laid off. Apparently last year he was offered a promotion. He took it. He got a signing bonus. And this year he's getting busy on some projects, but a lot of these contracts were canceled because of DOGE. And so he's got laid off. And I'm very honest about the human cost. We're familiar with terms called creative destruction, disruptive innovation. This is the time, especially now with the inflation, the way the stock market's going with the tariffs, is to get your finances in place. So here's my patented 3 rules. Get on a budget, get out of debt, and don't do drugs. What I mean by those is you get a written budget. So this is the church's One for the Money pamphlet. They also, I'll put a link to the personal finances one, which is a more updated for self-reliance. So this is a budget. Yeah, right here. Like I said, I do this on the fly. I'm not one to be on these things. Hey, look, there's a budget right there from the church. So the church is doing stuff. That's a basic budget. And there's online apps. You can use I use a spreadsheet of a budget of my own making. I've been using it for about 15 years now. It seems to work for me. I like the digital because I can go back and look at it and you're not lugging paper around. Get out of debt. Use something called a debt snowball. Debt elimination calendar, where you stack all your debts in order. 3 ways to approach this: largest to smallest, smallest to largest, and highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. Now, when I decided to get out of debt, my credit card and my student loan were about the same level. So I started paying off the credit card because you can get a hardship deferral with your student loan, which you can't with your credit card. Sometimes it just doesn't matter one way or the other. At least you're doing something. Dave Ramsey likes the smallest to largest because that builds up psychological momentum. Which is a good approach. Emergency fund. Get your emergency fund in place. You have $1,000 in a savings account in 3 to 6 months in a money market account. Money market accounts have higher interest rates. Make sure you're using some common sense. Now, put a link to the church's personal finance for self-reliance. You can get on your desktop. It's also on the Gospel Library app. You have to go into the lessons and the self-reliance things. It may get a little bit of searching, or you can just search for it with the spyglass. Make sure you're getting copies. Used bookstores, I recommend. This is a used copy. Richest Man in Babylon. Take good notes. Is it Richard Paul Evans, Christmas box guy, writes all those Christmas books, same story, but we just keep buying it up. The 5 lessons of Millionaire taught me about, life and wealth. Yeah. When you get rich, you just start handing out the advice. I'm out of debt. I paid off all my student loans. This is the greatest blessing in my life because I can go on eBay, and if I see a box of glow-in-the-dark Frisbees, I don't give in to impulse shopping. That's what paying off your debt does. It strengthens your character. Get a copy of Dave Ramsey's 7 Baby Steps. See, the secret is once you pay off your debt, you start keeping your money. That is, that you're not paying interest, you collect interest. It's the same thing with stocks. Now, you don't collect interest, but you have what's called unrealized gain, and you have dividends. Is that if you own stock in, like, say, Campbell or Ford, they'll pay you dividends out of the profits that a company makes. So you'll buy a stock, and when you sell it, you get the realized gain. But through the process of holding on to the stock, you get a bunch of dividends. So it's just more money in your pocket, and that's how rich people work. The Millionaire Next Door, The Millionaire Mind. Some of these books were popular back in the 1990s when I was organizing my life, and they're still good reading. So yeah, and just get your life in order. Follow basic practices. Go to your bishop if you need help. But what are you doing with your tax refund? Glow-in-the-dark frisbees, Ozzy Osbourne bobbleheads. Nah, pay off your debt. Put in some place that's really good. Get up that emergency fund going, because you don't know what's going to happen. DOGE, it is causing some pain, and I put a link to President Benson's had a talk called The Proper Role of Government. Now, there's a copy on it for the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE.org. I recommend that site. Get a copy of their book, Economics in One Lesson, and the book iPencil. The letter I has like an iRobot or what have you, like a Will and Testament, iPencil, good readings. But President Benson gave a talk at BYU, and they have the audio there, but he gave it in General Conference in October 1968. I put a link to it there, Proper Role of Government. And he talks about the pain that's going to happen as we start getting government in place. We're going to get this disruption. Another thing to think about this, and this is in context with my friend who's unemployed, is Henry Hazlett. He was wrote a book called Economics in One Lesson. This is the book in one sentence. The art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate, but at the longer effects of any act or policy. That's thinking beyond stage one. It consists in tracing the consequences of that policy, not merely for one group, but for all groups. And we can make a bunch of these short-term decisions. Well, if we cancel these programs, people are going to get unemployed. That's a short-term consideration for this small group, but what's the long-term consideration for the whole? If you read the Book of Mormon, you know the system can collapse. It's collapsed twice. I served my mission in Portugal. System collapsed. The Celts, it collapsed with the Romans. Portuguese came in there. Muslims came in there. Portuguese got control. Spain invaded Portugal. They had to move the court to Brazil to keep government functioning. So government's not a given. America's not a given. We have two statements from Brigham Young and Ezra Taft Benson about how the stars and stripes will be flying on this country when Christ returns on the earth. But President Benson talked about, it can be there, but it can be weakened and made less effective. So keep all that in mind. We're protecting the system. We're amputating a toe to preserve the body. Now, Heritage Foundation, you remember them with Project 2025 and the hysterics around that? Well, they issued something called the Phoenix Declaration. And this is the, 7 principles of the Phoenix Declaration. 1, parental choice and responsibility. Parents are the primary educators of their children. Transparency and accountability. Schools must be fully transparent with parents about curricula, policies, student well-being. Truth and goodness. Students deserve an education grounded in objective truth, free from ideological fads, and oriented toward the pursuit of the good. Cultural transmission. Students should learn about America's founding principles and roots in the broader Western and Judeo-Christian traditions. Character formation. Schools must prepare children for the challenge and responsibilities of adulthood by cultivating virtue, personal responsibility, like getting out of debt and paying your debts that you legally entered into, and self-discipline, academic excellence, citizenship. That was number 7. Well, who are opposed to all of those things? If you're opposed to those things, you need to rethink your life, to quote Star Wars. Those are good things. Those are the keys to success. And if you're opposed to that, we're on the same page. We're arguing about reality. Only an ideologue would be opposed to such a thing. I mean, you have to be really drenched in if you're against all of that. You remember back in 2020, the National Museum of African American History, they apologized for a chart listing attributes of whiteness. You remember that? I found a copy of it, and there's a link to it. hard work and rational linear thinking as whiteness, objective rational linear thinking, quantitative emphasis, hard work before play, are aspects of whiteness. There is an anti-white trend. We have the expression among blacks, Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside. Native Americans have the term an apple, red on the outside, white on the inside. You're acting white. That's loser think. That's poisoned thought. So this is what you tuned in for. Presidential address, joint session. Now that what you saw was a 2-hour postdoctorate certification on persuasion. So I'm not going to talk about things. I'm going to talk about how how Donald Trump persuaded people. First of all, the framing. He frames it as the golden age. Who's against the golden age? Well, you say, well, it's not the golden age, it's the gilded age, it's the lead age. There's sarcasms to respond to that, but that's good framing. He did a priming. Now, this is really interesting because it can be understood as well poisoning, but you listen to what he points out something. He says, I realize there's absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy, the Democrats, or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Now, he's using concretes here, standing, smiling, applauding. Didn't say make them happy, but he's describing outward stuff. When you writers are told show, don't tell, that's what he's doing. He's focusing on concretes. He said he could cure disease, get economic growth, end war. And he said this would never give him any credit for it. And he said it's very sad and it just shouldn't be that way. That's what's called a high ground maneuver. So he continues with the high ground maneuver. So Democrats sitting before me, for just this one night, why not join us in celebrating so many incredible wins for America, for the good of our nation? Let's work together and let's truly make America great again. So he's appealing to the higher motives. That's what Dale Carnegie talks about and how to win friends and influence people. That's another book you should add to your personal success library. Appeal to nobler motives. Can you get past your partisanship and just sheer success? They did what's called list persuasion. He talked about the specifics of the first six weeks, the executive orders, the changes. He used contrast. He contrasted himself with Joe Biden. One term of Trump, one term of Joe Biden. So rare with the second term of Trump, non-consecutive, second time in history. Then he used another thing, putting a face on it. This is the emotional attachment. The young boy who had cancer and was part of the Secret Service of the other people. The woman who was killed by an illegal alien, putting a face on it, making a human connection. Reagan was actually the first person to do that, but it's very effective. Said, okay, here's what we're doing, and here's the human cost or the human success of what we're doing. So take good notes. Now, source for this on persuasion, I recommend Scott Adams. His two books, Win Bigly and Loser Think. They're talking about persuasion and this poisoned mindset that you get. People walking around with a bunch of venom in their brain, and it just doesn't work. Persuasion's important. You can win an argument without persuading someone. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. But you study President Trump's techniques of persuasion. It's very good. It's phenomenal, Reagan level. There's an article in the Deseret News, and it said, opinion by Katie Stevenson. She's a BYU grad and a lawyer. Religious Americans should be concerned about immigration raids in places of worship. Now, what happened is, with a lot of tackling the immigration issue and the legal immigration issue, remember there's legal immigration and illegal immigration. Do not make a category mistake between the two. President Trump lifted some restrictions that were in place. It has to do with hospitals, and it also has to do with places of worship. Now, here's some consideration. For example, now I work at a hospital. Part of the reason why I shaved is this week we had N95 mask fittings, and if you have a facial hair, you can't wear an N95 mask. So if there's another COVID-19, it comes off, and I have to wear the mask in order to protect myself. We had a problem during the pandemic. A woman would want to wear lipstick, but it would smear the inside of the N95 mask. And I had to keep telling the ladies, stop wearing lipstick and blush and whatever makeup you're wearing because it's messing up the masks. So let me get back to this. ICE raids, immigration raids, Border Patrol coming into churches and hospitals, but this is about churches. So in law, clergy is a privileged relationship. You know, the expression attorney-client privilege, medical privilege. You have to keep stuff secret between an attorney and a client with your medical professional, spousal. This also has to do with clergy, and that's a debate about if someone confesses a sin to a bishop or a priest, is the priest obligated? And sometimes it's actually illegal for a priest to do that because that'd be a breach of the privileged relationship. Certainly, as a clergy, you're going to tell them, okay, you need to, I can't talk about this because it's privileged, but you need to talk about it. You need to go to the police about this as part of the repentance process. And so that's an aspect to it. First Amendment, that's a common law and that affects the First Amendment. The other one is what's called benefit of clergy. Now, what happened is if you're a cleric of some sort, you actually were exempt from some laws. And England removed that benefit in 1827 due to the abuses that happened. So if places of worship and hospitals are off limits to enforcing a law, if you can't raid these places, what incentives are being created? Okay, what are some of the benefits of not doing it, but also allowing immigration to go into places of worship? What's the potential abuses? What are the benefits for both the church and the state? So I'm not giving you an answer. I want you to think about this. If you don't allow people to go into these places, what's going on now? A hospital, this isn't like someone in the middle of surgery, pulling someone off the bed when the doctor's holding their kidney. That's not going to happen. But what do you do with hiring practices, but also with churches, hiding people? Now, put this in terms of some of the countries that we're at war with, where they have mosques and they have the terrorists operating out of a mosque. Does that create what's incentives being created? So I'm not your brainwasher. I just want you to think about that. Now, I just remind you, too, of the Church's statement, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 1, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints obeys law. 2, we follow Jesus Christ by loving our neighbors. The Savior taught that the meaning of neighbor includes all of God's children. We seek to provide basic food and clothing as capacity allows to those in need, regardless of their immigration status. We're expressly concerned about keeping families together, and that has to do with anchor babies. I actually listened to a news story, and the guy said, yeah, they're from the Caribbean. They intentionally flew to America to get anchor baby status. That's why he was an American citizen, because his mom did the anchor baby thing. So keep those in mind, and how you, not me, how you answer that question for yourself. Now, here's another article. I got this from, I guess it's off of Meridian Magazine. Are we rewriting Heavenly Mother to fit our own beliefs? This is from Amanda Freebairn, Bairn, March 2nd, 2025. She's talking about the parental runaround. As a kid, what would happen is that you talk to one parent, the parent would say no, so you talk to the other parent, the parent would say yes. And she said, are we doing this with talking about Mother in Heaven? And then the article says, but something that quickly surprised me was the frequency with which Heavenly Mother was presented as being at odds with her spouse. Spouse is in capital, Heavenly Father. There seemed to be an implication that he was the mean Old Testament God and she was the more compassionate, loving God from modern sensibilities. In many publications, she is presented as an LGBT plus ally and often connected with a progressive American identity. Heavenly Mother is anti-racist. Heavenly Mother, according to some, doesn't approve of her temple garments. Okay, if you don't like temple garments, can you admit that you're proud and vain? Is that the issue? That you're not getting body dysphoria, but you're just a proud and vain person? For others, the doctrine of Heavenly Mother is too heteronormative and that it must need to undergo theological queering. The expression, that's worth the price of reading that article. Now, I have no doubt that Heavenly Mother loves all her children fully and equally, including those who identify with different genders, orientations, and races. I'm equally confident that our Mother in Heaven doesn't turn her back on us when we struggle with aspects of gospel or not making choices aligned with the commandments. That's interesting because she hits the point is that, first of all, men and women are going to process this differently. And when men and women process things differently, that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. They're just processing differently. And I remember at BYU, I had a religion teacher. Now, she wasn't part of the religious department. She was like one of these step-in professors because everyone has to take a religion class. That's the problem with BYU is everyone has a as a religious study minors from Institute, but we just don't get credit for it. So that's the sort of the deception. They need to be a little more honest about that at BYU. But yeah, I remember in class she was a female teacher, and suggests the idea that sometimes abuse victims pray to their mother in heaven. And yeah, that's the problem. That's no different than praying to Mary or Saint Anne or Santa Barbara, Our Lady of Fatima. Yeah, but that's what's going on. But also, the tactic that I talked about earlier on is called the dead ventriloquist fallacy, where you take someone and someone puts words in another person's mouth. If so-and-so were here today, he would say such and such. And you can just put anything in, and that's a logically invalid statement. It's called what's called hypothesis contrary to fact. Write that down in your logical notebook. Study logical fallacies. Hypothesis contrary to fact. That person isn't here. We do that with C.S. Lewis. We'll take him, quote him, misquote him, and he doesn't. When he talks about us being gods, it doesn't mean what Joseph Smith taught. It's a different understanding, and we're just sort of we're not being honest about what's going on because we're reading our own stuff by using this person as a dead ventriloquist. They're the dummy on our lap. Yes, I would. Yes, I also have to. Yeah, no, it just doesn't work. Same thing with the Mother in Heaven, dead ventriloquist. So that's the end of the news. Remember, DOGE and disruption. This is serious. A friend of mine is out of work because of the cutbacks. I'm taking this very seriously, but I also understand you amputate a toe to save a body. There's other options going on there, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have this job disruption. Make sure you're following the principles. Get on the Dave Ramsey's baby steps. 5 lessons a millionaire taught me. Richest man in Babylon. Study what the scriptures have to say about personal finance. 22 minutes, and that's news with the eyes of faith.